Hello, this is a Bösendorfer 170 centimeters grand piano. That's 5 foot 7 inches long. Just come into stock. It's made in 1925. Just want to see what sort of work we might need to do to improve it, and also to appreciate the piano. The Bösendorfer 170 is one of our favourites. I've currently got one in my home, and it's one that I particularly like, and we've had many of them in stock before. So we're used to Bösendorfer 170s. They all vary from one to another, but there's some consistency of tone which we obviously are looking for, and very special tone, Bösendorfer 170. I'm saying this while I'm looking at the case, sorry about that, but you can see it's been repolished and refinished in a kind of matte mahogany, very tasteful. Now on this side of the piano, where the piano gets put on its side and on the shoe, there is a slight bit of damage here, which I think our polisher can disguise. He's not here at the moment, but he'll be back in a week, and I'm sure he's going to disguise that really well. So we're pleased about the case being practically perfect, no fading at all. You can see the top there, beautiful veneer as well, so that's encouraging. It's got the typical Bösendorfer style music stand. They vary slightly, but that's one of the most typical ones. 85 keys, by the way. This is beautiful ivories and in perfect condition. There's a lot of makes do 85 keys, and it's important to realise that you've not got the top 3 keys, which really you don't use very much. So just demonstrate that. So this is the Yamaha. If we listen to the top keys here, so that's the last one on the Bösendorfer, and 3 there that you can hardly hear. So they tend to be used in octaves like that, but you can take exams without those 3 keys. This is the Bösendorfer. So that's quite a clear sound. The hammers have been put on very well, so you don't tend to need to go beyond that, and very few pieces are, so you can take all exams. All exam pieces are made bearing in mind that some pianos are 85 keys. These are perfect ivories. You can just see the join which older pianos have between front and back, and they're absolutely perfect. Just slightly yellowed, which is fine. I think it's in keeping with the casework on the piano. The legroom is 60 centimetres, so but the pedals are only 5 centimetres from the floor, so you could raise them up by an inch or 3 centimetres even, and still only have the pedals the height of a typical modern piano. Now the piano has been restrung, and very well done as well. By the way, the serial number on Bösendorfers is here in this age of Bösendorfer, and it's often difficult to find. Sometimes when it's restored, the restorer loses it somehow, and sometimes it's carried over by dust, and people don't know what date their piano is as a result. Now most Bösendorfers of this age have a number on the bridge, which you can see there, 4609, and that isn't the serial number, but we're trying to get correlation between that and the serial number, so that if your serial number is missing, we can still date the piano. I'm very impressed with this because they've managed to find the Bösendorfer style finishing off of strings here. Normally when Bösendorfers are restrung, you end up losing that original style, which you can see is sort of fat, kind of club-like at the end, and that's typical Bösendorfer. Now there's quite a bit of regulation to do. The dampers are actually lifting off too early in the bass. You'll be able to hear it actually. I don't know if you can see them pushing the pedal down, and immediately they're lifting. In fact, they're lifting before I push the pedal down. If we listen to the bass here, so, and you can hear they're still holding on, so these need regulating. Regulating Bösendorfer dampers is one of the easiest dampers to regulate. And dampers to the keys in the middle here, they're too late, only just lifting, so they need to be lifting quite a bit earlier than that. Certainly halfway would be the norm, and they're nearly past 2/3 or 3/4 of the way. And by the way, the let off here, if we look at it, is letting off far too early. Let's have a look at that one, that's more obvious. So that's letting off, you may not be able to see on there, but I can see live that's letting off about 4 millimeters, 5 millimeters, and it should be 2 millimeters or less if we can manage to get it less, but it's got to have a margin of safety. So I'll just regulate a couple of them to see how close we can get. Looking at the action, there's an extensive amount of restoration being done. Got new hammers, shanks and rollers, but new weapons as well, new levers, so that's encouraging. And for some reason the regulation hasn't been finished off, so first of all we need to regulate the capstans here. That's underneath there, and you can see what happens when I turn the capstan. It brings the hammer up and down like that. So that needed regulating because the hammers were too far away. Hammer blow was too great. So setting it about 47. Just do it by touch very much. It can be 47 is the standard one, but just want to feel the piano, see what it feels like. And also then with the let off, if we put these two down together, you can see that the right hand one gets higher. Actually, you can also see it's much higher up. Sorry, the let off is here. This is the let off which we adjust to for when the jack pulls out. So the let off button is here, and it regulates when the jack pulls out. As you can see, if you turn it up, then the jack will pull out later. So on this top key you can see it pulling out, and if you want it to let off later, obviously it pulls out later. You can also see the drop screw there, which also needed regulating. That's the distance it ends up from the string when it's at rest there. So once it's done its job, it comes up and rests near the string, ready to repeat again. So the drop screw regulates where the hammer comes to rest once it's done all its work. So if we turn that backwards and forwards, if you look at the hammer, hopefully you can see the right hand hammer going up and down. So there it's going to go down and back up. So that was surprisingly out. I'm really surprised to find a piano that's had new hammers and new levers too, needing so much regulation. So you should be able to see the result of two regulation jobs we've done here, the let off and the drop screw. So the let off is how far it goes before the hammer comes back, and if you look at the right hand one, it comes back later than the left hand one. There we are, and you can see straight away that where it comes to rest is a lot higher on the right hand one. So if I play them both together, you should hear that I'm playing exactly the same time, and gradually increase the volume, as it will increase the pressure. You'll be able to hear hopefully the C coming in before the B. So played very gently. This is to do with the let off. The C will play very gently, and the B you need more force. So obviously that makes it more sensitive if you adjust the let off. To get a better idea of the difference when you adjust the let off, here's two notes. I've adjusted the capstans here, so the hammers are a bit higher, but not adjusted the drop screw. So this has been about 3/4 of a turn, and we'll see the difference between the two. So if you look at these two going up, without me playing the note, the right hand one gets closer to the string, and if I try and play the note very gently, we'll see what happens. So we've got two notes being pushed here, but you can see that the upper note, which is an F, plays a lot before the other one. And if I play louder now, you can hear the E kicking in. So obviously it makes it a lot more sensitive if you get the let off adjusted properly. Now looking at the regulation of the dampers, which we looked at the beginning, because they're holding on in the bass here, they're also, if you press the key down, they're coming off too early with the key as well. Whereas in the middle, if you remember before, we found that they were coming off too late with the key. So generally regulation not being done on this action for some reason. But the main problem is the pedal's lifting them too early, so they're actually sustaining because the pedal's lifting them. Sometimes that can happen when you lift them with the key as well. Sometimes they're lifting immediately. Actually, when I took the action out, I found that it was another issue that was causing the dampers to lift too early, and that is this rod wasn't quite seated properly. So after the removals, obviously it can be a problem sometimes the rod doesn't seat properly, and so that was a simple issue of just getting that sitting in its proper place. But you can see still that the bass dampers are lifting earlier than the others, and on a Bösendorfer, it's wonderful system they've got here, which is easy to adjust. You've got an adjustment here, you've got a spoon here, and you've even got a sideways play movement here, so it helps the damper to seat properly. This is a comparison with a Yamaha next to it, so not all Yamahas are identical on their damper system, but most grand pianos have this system where it's just, you have to, if you want to regulate the dampers and get the height changed, you have to unscrew this and actually change the position of the rod so that these seat properly. So what we usually do on most dampers is prop up the damper lift rod here, and then just make them all sit in the right place. So I'm going quite fast here. I'll try and show you that at a later date when we adjust a normal damper system. So there's no need to put anything under the rod here. We can just adjust the capstans here and make them so that they're all identical. So I'm just adjusting the capstan on the end one here so it lifts slightly later. And if we look at the bottom damper here, we can see it's lifting off later than the one next to it. These spoons are really for fine regulation, so if there's too many to do, you have to reset the whole lot. Otherwise, in other words, take like you do on the Yamaha, just undo this screw, let it drop down a bit, and then obviously the key's going to lift it earlier, and then needs to be obviously high enough over the damper lift rod so that you can adjust this too, but that will be fine. So I think we're going to have to reposition these before we do this fine adjustment on these. So I managed to get the damper lifting off halfway, roughly, using the spoon adjusting, but I think we'd have to re-regulate all of them really first, because it's too much to have to bend all those spoons and you can't really see how much you've done. So we need to do it in the way we traditionally would, which is lifting up the damper rod to the height that and then drop all the dampers down to that. So I hope that's understandable. Difficult to explain, but I hope you can understand some of that. But the spoons are very useful for fine regulation afterwards. So this is a fine Bösendorfer piano with good strings, good action parts fitted, but I'm surprised at how much regulation work there needs to be done. And finally, the keyboard is very heavy, so they're nearly all going above my weights, which are 65 grams in total. The up weight there is low, which is good, but just at the top we get just a bit below 60, but otherwise they're all above. So there's my set of weights on middle C, and with this wing nut on top is about 65 grams and just beginning to go down. So that should be 50 grams, as we've mentioned many times, roughly 50 grams, certainly around that region. Just at the top it starts to go down at 65. I think this one goes down below 65, so that's the only one that's about 60. So I need to add weights to the keys, and I think there's plenty of room to do that. There's just a couple of weights on that one, we could put weights right along here, and let's have a look at some other keys. So same again, and this sharp here. So hopefully we will be able to get the weight down without having to do anything like change action parts. Sometimes when levers and new hammers are fitted, it's really important to make sure they're the right weight, but these look like the right Bösendorfer hammers. The undercoverings, this colour that they usually are. There's more weights there, but I think I just want my technical department to look at this as well and to make sure we can weight this sufficiently, because it's got to go, the weight's got to be reduced quite considerably from 65 grams, and round here it should be more like 50 grams. So it's come down 15 grams. So we'll get their opinion when they have a look at this. So hopefully that's going to be able to be resolved without having to modify the action itself. But one way or another, we won't want to sell the piano unless it's the correct weight, so we'll have to solve the problem. So it's a Bösendorfer 170 grand piano made in 1925, and it's the sort of piano we're always trying to source. We've sold several of them. I've got one in my house at the moment. Really fond of them, so we're really grateful to get hold of the piano. It's been restored well in terms of the parts, but I was really surprised to find how much regulation work there needs doing, and the key weighting as well. So there'll be quite a lot of technical work to do before the piano's really going to feel like it should do. But the tone, it's a little bit bright, so it's going to voice the hammers. They've been worn in, I think now. They've been played in, shall we say, so which is good. So we can voice the hammers. That won't be a problem. I don't think we're going to have a problem with it. The key weighting is probably the main issue. I'm going to ask our technical department because it's unusual to find that heavy action on a piano that's been fully restored. So thank you very much for listening. If you're interested in the piano, please do write to us, info@robertspianos.com.